Vic, John, and I are going to talk a little bit about K-12 computer science and how it really forms a foundation for cybersecurity talent. Let me just pause and ask quickly here, since I know we're short on time. How familiar is the committee with computer science in general?
So I will say the members of this committee tend to be very IT focused and have backgrounds in IT. So I think we're fairly familiar from that perspective.
Perfect. All right, so I will go through our agenda here, and then I might skip ahead to some of the computer science basics, and we can get into more of the meat of the presentation. So we were going to initially kind of talk about why computer science is important and what it is, the connection to the cyber workforce, as the chair alluded to, where Minnesota is on computer science education, what does access and participation look like across the state, and then Vic is going to talk about what cybersecurity instruction looks like in Minnesota. And then John is going to close it out with a discussion of how we can further align curriculum to what industry needs. So again, I will kind of skip through this part pretty quickly, but this is really just to emphasize the 5 key concepts of computer science and the fact that computer science is more about creating with technology and solving problems with computers instead of just knowing how computers work, which is more, of course, computer literacy. And so at the elementary level, you're learning kind of the basics of what a computer is, loops, sequences in a very simple age-appropriate way. Middle school, you're looking at the problem-solving process. You're looking at how to start to create some computer artifacts and a little bit of web development, designing kind of components of a mobile app or an algorithm without actually coding it. And then high school level, doing more advanced coding, exploration of abstraction. Cybersecurity is more of an emphasis at this level, learning about digital information, how the internet works, and then kind of what data computing systems are in daily life and more of that data analysis. So why is this important? It is just part of what a modern education that is well-rounded looks like in our day and age. Technology is a part of every aspect of our daily life, and not teaching students about that is a huge gap in their education, especially when we teach students about the natural world and our government systems and all these things that are equal to our technology world. A lot of schools are asking for more AI literacy education for students. This is a really hot topic right now, and computer science is a perfect home for learning about those concepts. There are studies that show that computer science leads to better scores in reading and math, better scores in problem-solving type activities, and so it's just a really important tool to help support greater academic achievement for students. And then, of course, the workforce need. Computing jobs are growing at 10 times the rate of other jobs, and I'm going to talk more about the cybersecurity job needs in a little bit. But just to kind of look more in depth at, what cybersecurity instruction looks like in a computer science class, I have gone through kind of the big key concepts of computer science and fit in, some of the cybersecurity concepts that you would see in those broader categories. So when we look at data analysis of computer science, you're talking about protecting data, how data is stored. In the algorithms and programming part of computer science, you're learning about secure networks, encryption, software, internet and online security, of course, cryptography, threats, authentication, the trade-offs of, various security tools. And then when you're talking about the impacts of computing, of course, dynamics of social networking, the impacts of cyberbullying and all those kinds of things. But really, you can't learn about cybersecurity without learning computer science. And these skills and concepts are really necessary to create a foundation for the pursuit of cybersecurity as a specialization. And computer science really opens the door for cyber skills. And so this is just kind of reinforcing the fact that computer science is the home for cybersecurity. And as we expand computer science, we are expanding opportunities for students to pursue cybersecurity. I'm going to skip this slide for the sake of time, but wanted to highlight a couple states that are doing some strong things on cybersecurity. But looking more at the workforce need, as the chair mentioned, nationally, there are 600,000 unfilled cybersecurity jobs. Our workforce gap in this space is growing more and more every year. And this data is pretty fresh that John pulled this morning. Software developers projected to be the second highest gross job in the next 9 years. And then specifically in Minnesota, we have a really strong tech presence, both tech companies and actual jobs. And particularly in Minneapolis, 10% of the workforce is in that space. And because, of the unique role that cybersecurity specialists play in the country's security, it's really important that we continue to nurture that homegrown talent in this space. And so Minnesota's computer science instruction can play a really important role in that. All right, so where are we in Minnesota right now in terms of computer science instruction? So 36% of public high schools are currently offering computer science. You can see here in this graph where the state has come over the last 5 years. Minnesota was last in the country for the percentage of high schools offering last year, but as of this year, we are not anymore. So that's very exciting. We're still third last, but progress has been made, and more progress will be made in the future. So, and then when we look at where Minnesota is nationally, this is where it rates in terms of access. So percentage of high schools offering, again, down there at the bottom, but not last. And then in terms of participation, students actually enrolling in computer science courses. This is a different but related problem than access. And again, there's still a lot of things we can do to encourage that participation in Minnesota. And I just want to emphasize here, there's more of a variation in categories of schools, small schools and large schools, rural schools and urban schools as well, in terms of their access, but we won't kind of get into that today. So there was a state plan that looked at the data that I kind of just showed you and came up with ways that Minnesota could use that data and expand access to computer science statewide. And so I won't go into them into detail here, but know that this was one of the really important policies that was passed in the last couple years to put this working group together that created this state plan. And I'll talk on the next slide about the specific policy priorities that the CS for All working group is going to be asking for of the legislature next year. So these are kind of the components of the state plan that we really feel like are great next steps for policy progress in Minnesota. So, and John and Vic, feel free to chime in here as well to emphasize the importance of these things. But the first is creating that K-12 computer science pathway. So making sure that standards are created for K-8 computer science to make sure schools know what they need to teach in this space. And to make sure that every student is enrolled in computer science instruction. And then the second would be to make sure every high school is at least offering a course. And so that allows students to continue to pursue computer science coursework through their entire K-12 pathway. The second is funding of course, for schools. This is really important. We know they can't just do this on their own. So the first piece of this is allocating $15,000 to each LEA to create a plan for how they're going to expand access to computer science. And then the second piece is a competitive grant program from MDE to give LEAs some funding to actually implement those plans. The third piece is teacher qualifications. So we've got to have the teacher capacity to make this work. So this recommendation is funding to provide incentives for teachers to earn that computer science license, which is currently being created by PELSB right now. And so we still have to do more to build awareness among teachers that they can actually pursue this pathway and teach this subject. So this is a part of that effort. And then finally, the advisory committee. This advisory committee is really important because although MDE does have a staff member focused on computer science, and that's a recent development, which is really positive, she can't do all this work on this 10-point state plan herself. So bringing experts in to create some collaboration about guidance on all the resources schools are going to need. Building awareness, continuing to build awareness about the importance of computer science is going to be really important. At this point, I will turn it over to Vic to talk a little bit more about this.
I think this was actually my slide here, but
John's.
Go ahead, Mr. Dreier.
Go ahead, John.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, I don't need to spend a huge amount of time on this. I think you covered it well, Julie, but basically, I went through the education department at the CS as well, and right now there are about 40 colleges in Minnesota with PELSB approved programs. But what we need to do is create the standards and the demand for computer science / IT teachers for these colleges to create programs so that they can then teach the future teachers. Obviously, it is very difficult to compete with the industry for CS majors. If you're graduating as a CS major, I think it is a tough decision to say I would like to go into teaching. So making that attractive and exciting for students is one of the challenges. Of course, there are alternate pathways that we can pursue. We do have some CS teachers. Usually they are math teachers or CTE teachers. People like me who were in industry and decided they wanted to become teachers. We've been doing that for a while, and we're going to grandfather them in. Content area endorsements, so things like you have a math teacher who's really interested in IT or CS and wants to teach that, and they can do like a certificate rather than having to get a full license. But then one thing that I'm really excited about and the thing that I would like to pursue is, again, guys like me who are in industry, who really love computer science, who really love IT, who love computers, and who also are at a point in their life where they're saying, hey, I want to give back. I want to do something different. I've been doing this for a long time. And I honestly believe there are a lot of people out there who, if we approach them the right way, would be interested, in sort of their middle careers to say, yeah, I might be interested in coming and teaching at the K-12 level. And we have experience in Minnesota with using industry expertise as part of that licensure program. So if you have someone who's been, in Mayo IT or, Land O'Lakes IT or whatever IT department or, CS department, and they're interested in teaching, they can use that experience they've gained over years to help fulfill a lot of the requirements. And we can provide sort of the pedagogical side of it, the classroom management side of it, at the university level.
Thank you, Mr. Bartucz. And I think Mr. Dreier, now you're up.
Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for having us here today. Talking about what cybersecurity looks like right now at the high school level in Minnesota. And looking at this piece, I know Julie did a great job of really talking about where we've come in overall offerings at the high school level over the past few years, growing up to 36%, which we hope to grow beyond that. But when we look at cybersecurity specifically, so creating these experiences, the access for students to actually opt into cybersecurity specific experiences, only 21 out of 1,244 high schools in Minnesota right now offer a course or an elective in cybersecurity. That's 1.6%. So where are those programs at? If you look at the map, this is kind of a map of where those programs are active at those high schools. The other key piece to this that I take away, and in the work that we've done over the past 4 or 5 years, is that a lot of students that end up in the cybersecurity course, this is their first experience, or this is their first course taking anything in the computer science realm. And so with that, as we talk with teachers of these courses, they report back that students really that have an interest in cybersecurity, sometimes are not those traditional students that we see that go into a foundations course or maybe take one of the AP computer science courses. There's something about cybersecurity in the way that it helps the public, it helps people that they connect with and see the opportunity around cybersecurity as something that they would really have a passion for. So there's a different interest in this piece of the entry level into computer science that we don't see in some of the other offerings that we do with computer science. The other interesting piece of that is when we looked at the data specifically with the programs that we saw across the state, most all, or in many cases, this is like 96% of these have earlier computer science offerings. So in other words, there's stuff at middle school in these districts. There's offerings at the high school in these districts. So cybersecurity itself really does draw a different mix of students and a different group of students that aren't traditionally attracted to computer science, which is a fantastic thing as we look at the possibility of growing in this sector, as well as growing other opportunities across computer science as a sector, more across the state. Also, starkly, when you look at this map, there's a lot of this map not represented in its communities, its students, and its high schools for students to have this opportunity specifically with cybersecurity at the high school level. So if we go to the next slide, what does this look like for these students in these classrooms? Cybersecurity, I will say, is one of those things that we can draw students' interest into, but just by having the course, it doesn't naturally have people sign up or students sign up for this course. The approach that many of the programs take are that these are real world activity, project, problem-based experiences where they are basically introduced to cybersecurity through an introductory level, looking at things and how cybersecurity impacts them from the very first day. They're launched into simulations and scenarios. The first simulation that they're launched into, and these are mobile natives. The students that we have right now are mobile natives, and basically they've left their phone, locked, and someone, while they were gone, basically hacked their phone. And so with that piece, they are launched into a simulation of how this really could alter and really impact them based upon what they keep on their phone, the information that they have there, and the security of their phone, and how much other things in their lives could be impacted in a short amount of time. As they go into these pieces too, we launch them through each scenario with an ethical brief. And so with this piece, I think one of the biggest things, and one of the things that we fight in the sense of really socializing as well as getting that IT support in local school districts, for us to even be teaching or even exposing students to cybersecurity is what are the safety risks that we just were hearing about for the whole morning, for the rest of this meeting, to local infrastructure, to the school district infrastructure. For us to do that, again, everything that we do in these courses is on a virtual cyber range. So it's completely separate. And the ethical side of this is really focused on in every attribute with the teachers and how they actually unpack this with the students. They really look at this in the lens of what the social impacts are, the individual impacts are, as well as the fact that the skills that they can gain in cybersecurity can be used for good and to really help enhance the world as we move forward at this really rapid rate with AI moving things much faster than it has in the past, but also with the opportunities that go along with this. The other elements to this feed them from that individual level to a network level, up to a server and e-commerce level. And by the end of the year experience, they're looking at securing infrastructure, ironically, very specific to water and waste treatment and attacks that happen to those systems. The other element to that too is whenever they're securing infrastructure pieces, they look at the other elements of those supporting systems, as well as the career opportunities at each of these levels that are available to them, the career pathways that they will be exploring, as well as interactions with those cybersecurity professionals. So in many cases, there's these virtual connections, or as you can see in these pictures, professionals are welcomed into the classroom to work in these groups or these response groups that they're built into in the class, and looking at different ways of probing as well as getting mentorship, both virtually and in person, from those cybersecurity experts. With the world of digital and all the things that we can do in a virtual environment, This makes those connections much easier, but it does open up to many of those things that we talk about around safety and the concerns that we have with that. But the students do get this actual enriched experience of really using real world opportunity to talk through, work through, and collaborate with professionals. The other element is when we go into this piece is really connecting students with the opportunity that they have in their own backyard or here in the state of Minnesota. So if we go to the next slide, working with the MnTech Association for the past few years, as well as some of the national groups that really track the need around cybersecurity professionals, really since 2021, and even going back here in Minnesota since 2018, we've seen a slowdown in the tech growth sector for lots of different reasons. One of the biggest things, though, when we look at cybersecurity is it's been one of the more resilient ones here in Minnesota specifically. And as different things begin to progress where we actually have the needs as well as the support for infrastructure and staffing at both local, private, and public sector jobs, one of the biggest things that we see and we hear back from the different partners at MnTech Association and across employers in the state is that we're really going to see an explosion in demand for cybersecurity, and that will continue to outpace the tech sector overall. The other element behind this too is we do see a strong employment at 16,927 just as of the beginning of this month, really for the Minnesota cybersecurity workforce. And looking at that piece, we had 5,682 cyber openings just this last month or the last 30 days. This gets us back to about the range that we were in 2021 as far as employment in the sector. But one of the biggest things that employers report back is that it will be important for us to grow a homegrown workforce. One of the biggest things that they have to overcome for long-term retention in these positions is the Minnesota winter, and being able to connect with those pieces for those employees that come in from out of state for these positions and for their long-term success and enjoyment in the state. It really looks to really home growing our students that see the benefits of raising families and having successful careers here in Minnesota, that already know the beauty of our state and how to have fun in the wintertime. So I know there's several other variables with that piece, but that was what really boils down to in many cases, that we see this revolving door of recruiting from out of state, even from out of the country in many cases. And so that's why it's so important for us to build K-12 computer science pathways and to look into our own high schools to give them these opportunities and these experiences, while at the same time, at the end of those experiences, connecting them to the career opportunities and pathways and the supports for them to be successful as professionals here in the state and not other places. And with that, I'll pass it over to John to talk about industry connections.
I want to make sure that we're aware that we are here until 12. However, we are going to probably try to go for members who can stay a little longer. Please stick around. I do also want to make sure that members know that this presentation is in your packet. So if you have additional information for follow-up there, and we'll also make sure to get contact information for the presenters available to you and send it out along with that additional resources from the Assistant Commissioner in a follow-up email, but please be aware of that. I will go ahead and stay and make sure that we have some additional time for those who may have questions, but I just wanted to make sure that we're being reasonable about expectations on time. All right, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, no, thank you, the chair. I can make this quick too. So I don't know if all of you are familiar with the CTech Career and Technical Education Center at Heinz in Rochester, but it is a really unique educational facility that I highly, highly recommend learning about. There are 7 different pathways: agriculture, engineering, nursing, veterinarian, health sciences, hospitality, manufacturing and construction, teaching as a profession, and then computer science and information technology. And students get real world experience, hands-on. They come from schools all over Rochester to get bused for these classes. And it is such a unique experience highly recommend, especially if you can go down and get a tour. It's just an amazing facility. So that's where I started teaching my computer science classes. If you go to the next slide, please, Julia. When I started in 2016, there were a lot of curricula. Basically, there was AP Computer Science. That was it. And the problem is with that class, you generally get what students refer to as AP kids more than CS kids or tech kids or IT kids. They're the kids who've already taken all the other classes and they want to take some more AP classes to look good on their resume. And besides that, the analogy that I always use is not everybody wants to be an F1 driver, right? Some kids really like working on cars and they want to get in the engine and they want to get in the parts and they want to open up the hood. And yeah, driving is fun for them, but they love the cars. And that to me is one of the things that's missing from computer science education is the IT part. And so I really wanted, especially at this location at CTech, to provide IT opportunities, which in my mind encompassed cybersecurity, because that generally is not included in things like AP Computer Science in depth. So I wanted to start a curriculum, a class. There was no existing curriculum yet for the high school level at that time. So I basically made it up. I looked at CompTIA, which I'm sure a lot of you are experienced with, and the Cisco offerings. They didn't yet have the Cisco Networking Academy up and running yet. And I looked at professional certifications, and that's the way I advertised it to the kids, is I said, you take this class, I'm going to support you to take the professional CompTIA certification, and you will be able to go out after high school and tell potential employers, I have a professional certification. And that was a huge selling point for a lot of kids, especially if they wanted to go on. So we were in the same campus as RCTC, Rochester Community and Technical College. So if they wanted to continue on in IT at RCTC, this was just a huge boon for them, because then they could get internships, they could get apprenticeships. We have some big industries in the Rochester area. And they were super supportive in us building this program. We got a lot of our hardware was donated from businesses who were, upgrading to new desktops at the time. And so we literally have hands-on, take computers apart, put them back together, that kind of thing. And then in terms of cybersecurity, again, there wasn't any fixed curriculum. So I kind of said, well, they're going to need to know Unix. So we're going to install Linux on all these, donated machines. We're going to use the SANS Institute Cyber ACES curriculum, which again has kind of been deprecated and is something else now. But at the time, that's what it was. And I just had a meeting with the teacher who took over this program for me, and he said, not only has it expanded to all of the schools, there is now a geek squad at every public high school in Rochester, a high school. So they are getting training in partnership with our RPS IT department. They're getting training, so they are warranty approved. And every lunchtime in the school cafeterias, there is at least one or two students who are warranty approved, who receive tickets from the IT department. The students come with their one-to-one laptops, iPads, they have cracked screens, they have, broken keyboards, and the students are doing IT support, managing the tickets, managing the flow. And so it has really blossomed from this sort of, hey, it would be nice to have this program, to hands-on, internship essentially with the RPS IT department. And so these kids are not only getting the theoretical side of, cybersecurity and IT, but also the hands-on practical experience. So this is something, this is a model that I think would be amazing to spread across the state and would be really beneficial for a lot of kids.